There's one day every year that each beekeeper looks forward to the most. But if we don't know what we're looking for or what we're doing, it can really set off our beekeeping season off on the wrong foot. As a beekeeper myself, I always strive to get things right. And over the years, it's caused me to be more open-minded, realizing that not everything works the first time, and it often doesn't even work the second or third time. However, eventually, 23 years or more of experience teaches you a thing or two, and I've learned to break things down into simplistic things, little steps that make it easier for me to remember and easier for me to follow. And I've noticed that as a result, my own beekeeping operation becomes a little bit more seamless, a little bit easier, and have a lot more fun with it. So today, I'm going to take you along with me, show you the 4 things to look for during your first spring hive inspection. And I don't just mean your very first one. I mean, we do this at the beginning of every year. It's that day that each and every beekeeper looks forward to the most. The first time of the year that we get to poke our noses in our hives and see them for the first time. The ones that survived through the winter time. And so we get to begin the beekeeping season all over again and get it better this time. And of course, I'm going to save the most important of these 4 steps for last. It's crucial that you do this one thing, so stick in there with me. What we begin with is the easiest part, because when we open up our hives, the first thing we're going to see, the first thing that I notice is how many frames of bees do I have. That's going to tell me, and it's going to give me a visual inspection on the size of the population of my colony. And sometimes it can be disappointing when you only see 1, 2, maybe 3 frames of bees, but it's really exciting when you see more than that. And it doesn't mean that if you have a small population that they're not going to make it. In fact, out of the 4 hives I have in this yard, I've got 1 that's bigger than the other 3. What I really like to do is to see how many frames of brood there are. And not just how many frames of brood there are, but I ask myself, do they have all 3 stages of brood? Do they have eggs? Do they have larvae? And do they have pupa, which is the capped brood? I love knowing and seeing that my colonies have all 3 stages of brood, all times of the year that I can do inspections, but especially in the spring. So the third thing that I usually look for is usually the second thing I find, but that's the order I'm going in today. And that's how much food do they have? And the reason I usually look for that before the brood is because I like to take the outside frames out first, so that I don't take any of the middle frames out and put the queen at risk, rolling her between a couple of frames or pinching her. I like to work from the outside in and keep her safe. And that's going to tell me what kind of frames of food from last fall my bees still have, or if they need to be fed. And when I'm checking how much honey my bees still have, I also ask myself other questions like, are they bringing in pollen yet? And right here, you can see my bees are actually bringing in maple pollen. I've learned to recognize when maple is blooming, what the color of that pollen is. So I can actually tell maple is blooming just by watching my bees bring in pollen. And do I need to feed them any supplements like liquid feed, sugar syrup, or possibly some pollen supplements, which I did put on this spring to give them a boost and a head start. And I used HiveAlive 15% pollen patties this year for the first time. Or maybe fondant patties might be the way to go. Either way, whatever I decide to do, one of the consequences is that it takes time. First spring hive inspections should be pretty thorough. At least I like to make them thorough. And that's okay. I'm a beekeeper and it's what I signed on for willingly. So when I say consequences, I don't mean it like in a bad way or an obligation. I mean it in a way that I have the opportunity to be thorough and I know where my bees stand. I think one of the greatest benefits from learning to be thorough but efficient without being too cumbersome or spending too much time during a hive inspection in the hive is that the feeling it gives me knowing that my bees are doing well, that I know what I'm doing, and that I'm always learning. Alright, so we've come to the fourth and final, most important element of a spring hive inspection to me. But before I get into that, I want you to comment below and let me know, what do you really want to look for? What do you look for in your own operation that's important to you? And of course, if you guys have never tried HiveAlive, I highly recommend it. I used their pollen patties this year. I went with the 15% pollen rather than the 4 because I want my bees to build up and I want them to build up fast. So check out everything in the link below. And the fourth and most important element to me during a spring hive inspection is to visually locate the queen. Most of the year, it's enough for me to identify signs that the queen is there because I don't like to rummage through a hive and put her at greater risk. But I need to know first thing out of the gate in the springtime whether my colonies have a queen and I want to put my eyes on her. Now as I put everything back together here on the last hive and before I move on to the next apiary, I just want to thank all you guys again for joining me. Drop me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the Hive Doctor.